All right, welcome. We will continue our study of the Amidah's meditation against the background of what Rabbi Kaplan identifies as a fundamental spiritual practice of ours, meditation of all types. And we're finishing up the first bracha of the Amidah, in particular looking at the verbiage regarding the Redeemer. So let us continue. And as always, we will wrap it up with some tips on improving your meditation and actually meditate. So that will be fun. Let's go to sharing the screen. Okay. We are back in this book, Jewish Meditation.
Steve, just letting you know, Steve, you're breaking up every so often.
I have no control. I don't know how to. It's just the transmission. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, the internet. So, I mean, one, it helps for us all to be muted, which pretty much we are. I just unmuted just now. But if you get closer to your router, things like that, if you're wireless, whatever. But I noticed last time too. That's all.
It happens very infrequently, though, right, Marty?
Yes.
And he loses a word, but then it comes back, so you don't even miss that one word.
All right, I'll go slower. Okay, I'm muting everybody. Okay, this is the book, the Amidah's meditation. Let's take a look at it. 115 to 116. Just as a review, this is what he says. We see God as our hope in the future, no small thing in this age over which the Damocles sword of nuclear destruction hangs over us. We believe that God will bring a Redeemer who will make the world a safe and sane place to live. We have faith that there will come a time when all humanity will be brought back to the God consciousness that the patriarchs enjoyed, and that this will be a time of universal peace and good for all humankind. This is our ultimate hope in the future. It's quite a formula. There's a guy who's a redeemer. He's going to make the world safe and sane somehow. When that occurs, or as that occurs, then people are going to have God consciousness, whatever that is, same as that the patriarchs had, and we will have peace and good. Okay, and that's our ultimate hope. That is quite a recipe. So obviously we have to dive deep and try to get some kind of understanding of this. Okay, so also as a review, the word in the blessing for Redeemer is gimel-aleph-lamed, which Rabbi Hirsch defines as being to release or purge. We looked at two instances in the Chumash, in the Torah, in which that word is used. One is when Jacob is giving his blessing to Joseph and his sons. And Jacob basically says that God sent an angel, so to speak, to be his redeemer, because we know Jacob had quite the troubled life, many obstacles, and in Jacob's point of view, God redeemed him, spared him from those troubles time and time again. We looked at another instance, this time during the Jews' experience in Egypt, when Moses was like, people aren't believing you. And God says, don't worry about it. I'm going to be the Redeemer. I'm going to lift you out of Egypt with an outstretched arm and rescue you from the persecution of the Egyptians. So once again, that same word, in this case, God is the Redeemer. That same word is being used to describe something or somebody who saves us out of the trouble. Okay. So that word has, the Redeemer has been synonymous with Moshiach or Messiah. So we're going to continue to try to get a grip on what that is. Also using Rabbi Kaplan's teachings, this time in his anthology, Volume 1. Anthology Volume 1. We got into this a bit last week. We're going to continue. Okay. We left off last week with Rabbi Kaplan talking about the idea of swords being beaten into plowshares and stating that the hundreds of billions of dollars now used for war and defense will be diverted to the perfection of society. There will be a standard of social justice exemplified by the prophecy of Isaiah, saying, "The Lord has sworn, surely I will no more give your corn to be food for your enemies, and strangers will not drink your wine, for which they have not labored." This is also the spirit of the prophecy from Isaiah, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and untie those who are bound. So no more war. And the Mashiach, the Messiah, is going to have something to do with that. And then Rabbi Kaplan continues, some of the most radical changes will be a result of the nullification of the curse of Adam. The technological revolution will largely eliminate the curse from the book of Genesis. And the curse is from God, with the sweat of your brow, you shall eat bread. So Rabbi Kaplan's understanding of that curse is that people, in particular males, are going to have to work hard for a living with the ground. But those days are going to be over when the Messiah comes. And Rabbi Kaplan continues, this change will be even more far-reaching with respect to a woman. Many of women's disadvantages are a result of Eve's curse. The curse then was, in pain you shall bear children, and you shall desire your man, and he shall rule over you. Women's status will change profoundly when this curse is eliminated, and this may well be the meaning of the prophecy from Jeremiah, for God will create a new thing, a woman shall court a man. Obviously, another deep dive is required here about the details of these curses and the implications for reversing them. But what we'll settle for now is the idea that at the time of the Messiah, there's going to be a reversal of those curses, which you recall stem from the misbehavior with the serpent in the Garden of Eden and giving into their desire for the apple, whatever the apple represented. So that's going to be reversed. Also make note of the fact that earlier Rabbi Kaplan said that the process that the Patriarchs started as far as educating all humanity about God and being conscious of God, that will be culminated in the time of the Messiah. So here again, he's pointing to a plateau or some kind of high point in the history of people when the Messiah comes. First, with a process that started with the Patriarchs, he mentioned, but even before that, the fulfillment of a process that started with Adam and Eve, the original people way back when at the beginning of history. Very significant time. And he continues, the rapid changes on both a technological and sociological level will result in great social upheaval. The cataclysmic changes will result in considerable suffering, often referred to as the Chevle Moshiach, or birth pangs of the Messiah. If the Messiah comes with miracles, these may be avoided, but the great changes involved in his coming in a natural manner may make these birth pangs inevitable. Okay, what he's referring to there is something we discussed last week, which is one way or another, the Messiah is going to come. We could have it easy or we could have it hard, so to speak. The easy way is through miracles, where we're bypassing natural history. The hard way is if it comes incrementally and we have to have an organic process. Rabbi Kaplan emphasized that it's up to us if we're ready for miracles, if we've gotten our spiritual / sociological act together, then even the miracle, then radical change won't be radical. It'll be radical from the point of view of jumping through history, but it won't be radical in terms of how it affects us. We'll be able to accept miraculous changes. But if we haven't gotten our act together sufficiently, then it's going to be more organic in a natural manner, as he says, and that's going to be harder for us to take. Either way, Rabbi Kaplan emphasizes that we're not going to get shocked by it, because that would be counterproductive. God's not going to deliver a Messiah that will shock the system through miracles, because it has to be a productive. There needs to be positive change. People need to be able to receive the Messiah, work with the Messiah. So if we can't take them, then what good is it? As a side point, this is reminiscent of the commentary on the giving of the 10 Commandments at Sinai, where the idea is that in the first 2 commandments, God spoke in the first person. I am the God, I brought you out of Egypt. And after that, the people said, we can't take this anymore. This is a direct communication, confrontation with God, too much for our system. Moses, you please take over and get the rest. You take the dictation now. Take over for us. You be our ambassador. Moses had that high level of spiritual attainment. He could take the face-to-face, so to speak, encounter with God. The rest of the Hebrews cannot. And so that's an example of a shock to the system that was counterproductive, and they had to back out of it. Okay, same kind of thing. Rabbi Kaplan is making the point that we're not going to repeat that when the Messiah comes, people are going to be able to deal with it. Okay. Since in a period of such accelerated change, parents and children will grow up in literally different worlds, traditions handed from father to son will be among the major casualties. This will be especially true of the values of religion. In such a rapidly changing world, people will naturally be enamored with the new and dissatisfied with the old. Thus, our sages teach us that neither parents nor the aged will be respected. The old will have to seek favors from the young, and a man's household will become his enemies. Insolence will increase. People will no longer have respect, and none will offer reproof. Religious studies will be despised and used by non-believers to strengthen their cause. The government will become godless, academies places of immorality, and the religious will be denigrated. Now, all this is happening today, especially in the universities, but I'm not going to go down the road of saying that this is definitely what this is talking about. It looks and feels like it, but we're not going to get into that. But a lot of these characteristics, a lot of these issues take place today. Judaism will suffer greatly because of these upheavals. There is a tradition that the Jews will split up into various groups, each laying claim to the truth, making it almost impossible to discern true Judaism from the false. This is the meaning of the prophecy from Isaiah, truth will fail. It has also been predicted that many will leave the fold of Judaism completely. This is how our sages interpret the prophecy from Daniel, the wicked shall do wickedly and not understand. Well, that's happening today too, but again, who knows exactly when the time will be. Of course, there will be some Jews who remain true to their traditions. They will realize that they are witnessing the death throes of a degenerate old order and will not be drawn into it. But they will suffer all the more for this and be dubbed fools for not conforming to the debased ways of the pre-Messianic age. This is the meaning of the prophecy from Isaiah, he who departs from evil will be considered a fool. So as a side note, you can see that Rabbi Kaplan is the kind of scholar that has great confidence in his ability to comprehend the meaning of prophecy, in the meaning of Tanakh, including prophecy, and say, yes, this means this, and it applies today to that. That's bold, but it's to his credit that he achieves such levels of scholarship that he has that confidence. It's tough to be able to do that, because as a lot of teachers will tell you, you can't just dive into a phrase or a verse and say, it definitely means this, and it can be applied this way. You have to know what you're doing, and he apparently does. I give him credit for knowing what he's doing. One of the most important traditions regarding the Messianic age concerns the ingathering of the diaspora and the resettlement of the land of Israel. It will begin with a measure of political independence, and according to some, with the permission of the other nations. Now, somebody right out there is thinking, oh, 1948, UN, statehood of Israel. Maybe. And according to some, with the permission of other nations. There are numerous traditions that Jews will begin to return to the land of Israel as a prelude to the Messiah. There is also a tradition that the land will be cultivated at that time based on the prophecy from Ezekiel. But you, mountains of Israel, you shall shoot forth your branches and yield your fruit to my people of Israel, for they are at hand to come. There is also a tradition that the Messiah will reveal himself in the land of Israel. I know a lot of you guys remember Roman, the Ganuts moved to Israel a month ago. So they made Aliyah, and I keep inviting Roman to tune into this class. He keeps saying he's very busy, fine. And he knows that the top of the class dealt with the Messiah. So his statement today when he responded to the text was, I'm not too concerned about this because I'm closer to where the Messiah is going to come than you are. And my response was, well, I heard a rumor that the Messiah is going to come in Fairlawn. So who knows? So we'll find out. Maybe Fairlawn will be the place. There is even evidence that the majority of the Jews will have to return to their homeland before the Messiah comes in a non-miraculous manner. That's what Romans say. One of our important traditions regarding the advent of the Messiah is that it will mark the return of prophecy. Furthermore, according to many traditions, the Messiah will be preceded by the prophet Elijah, Eliyahu, and furthermore, he himself will be a prophet. However, there is a basic teaching that prophecy can only exist in the land of Israel, and then only when the majority of Jews live there. Thus, unless we assume that this rule is to be broken, the majority of Jews will have to live in the land of Israel before the Messianic age commences. Of course, now the question is, what's a majority? Is it a simple majority? Is it like 60%? Okay. Another important consideration is the tradition that the Beit HaMikdash, or Holy Temple, will be rebuilt before the onset of the Messianic age. However, there is also a tradition that Jerusalem cannot be rebuilt before the ingathering of the diaspora. This would also seem to indicate that Israel will be settled before the Messianic age. However, it is possible that the Messiah himself will accomplish these things before he is actually recognized for what he is. We will discuss this point later. So, this is one reason why we can't speak definitively about anything, because even as Rabbi Kaplan says, there are different schools of thought which contradict each other and which are equally relevant and credible. So that's why I think it's important that we refrain from speaking, oh, this is what this means. We don't know. Okay. Into a world prepared to receive him, the Messiah will then be born. Okay, so nonetheless, there needs to be a readiness for the Messiah, whatever that means. But important to say that he won't come until we're ready. He will be a mortal human being born normally of human parents. And just as an aside, in his essays, Rabbi Kaplan, he actually has an essay, but in this anthology before this one, he talks about Jesus. And so he's careful to identify what we consider to be the true Messiah. Because he understands that in today's world, there could be misunderstandings in that. Tradition states that he will be a direct descendant of King David. And indeed, there are numerous Jewish families today that can claim such lineage. We all know of leaders who have literally changed the course of history. We have seen, for example, how an evil genius like Hitler literally hypnotized an entire nation, bringing it to do things that normally would be unthinkable in a civilized society. If such power exists for evil, it must certainly exist for good. That is a yin-yang fundamental principle that I see a lot in Rabbi Kaplan, which is very encouraging, and which I think points to a fundamental set of principles that are inherent in Jewish metaphysics, which we don't pay a lot of attention to, which we really should dive into. But one of them is the yin-yang thing. If such evil exists, then such good must exist. The world having to be in balance type of thing. That is, I've seen that a lot. That's a pretty fundamental idea we have. So in this case, it's pretty encouraging. Now imagine a charismatic leader greater than any other in man's history. Imagine a political genius surpassing all others. With the vast communication networks now at our disposal, he could spread his message to the entire world and change the very fabric of society. Now imagine that he is a religious Jew, excuse me, a tzaddik, and may have once seemed far-fetched for a tzaddik to assume a role in the world leadership, but the world is becoming increasingly more accustomed to accepting leaders of all races, religions, and ethnic groups. We may soon have reached the stage where it is not far-fetched to picture a tzaddik in such a role. It's interesting to note, first he's saying that imagine a political genius surpassing all others, and now he's talking about being a religious Jew. We're talking about a political figure, a world's political figure that's a religious Jew. One possible scenario could involve the Middle East situation. This is a problem that involves all the world powers. Now imagine a Jew at tzaddik solving this thorny problem. It would not be inconceivable that such a demonstration of statesmanship and political genius would place him in a position of world leadership. The major powers would listen to such an individual. Let us go a step further. With peace established in the land of Israel, he could induce many more Jews to immigrate to Israel. Perhaps he would negotiate with the Russian government to allow all of its Jews to leave. Aha. So, you know, when he wrote this, it was before the exodus of the Soviet Jews. Things might then have become uncomfortable enough for American Jews to induce them to emigrate as well. Witness the decay of the large cities where the majority of Jews live and work. In such an unassuming manner, the ingathering of the exiles could take place. The Jewish people have always had a profound respect for those who assume roles of world leadership. This tzaddik would naturally be a most respected leader in all Jewish circles. He might even make religion respectable. It is just possible that all Jewish leaders would agree to name him their leader and confer upon him the Mosaic ordination. The chain of this ordination was broken some 1,600 years ago and must be renewed before the Sanhedrin, the religious supreme court and legislature of the Jews, can be reestablished. If that tzaddik was ordained by the entire community, he could then reestablish the Sanhedrin. This is a necessary condition for the rebuilding of the temple, as we find in Isaiah, and I will restore your judges as at first, and your counselors as at the beginning. Afterward, you shall be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. Such a Sanhedrin would also be able to formally recognize the Messiah. So we need to reestablish smicha, true rabbinic ordination, which we haven't had in 1600 years. I'm not casting aspersions on anybody that has smicha from OU or Chabad or anybody, but according to Rabbi Kaplan, that's not high enough to proclaim somebody the Messiah. And then we have to call the real Sanhedrin, the real religious court. In his position of leadership, through direct negotiation and perhaps with the concurrence of the world powers, this tzaddik might just be able to regain the Temple Mount for the Jewish people. So you can see he wrote this before 67. With the Sanhedrin to iron out the many halachic questions, it might then be possible to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. However, this is accomplished, we will already have fulfilled the essential part of the Messianic promise. Thus, the Rambam, Maimonides, writes, if there arises a ruler from the house of David, who is immersed in Torah and mitzvot like David, his ancestor, following both the written and oral law, who leads Israel back to the Torah, strengthening its laws and fighting God's battles, then we may assume that he is the Messiah. If he is further successful in rebuilding the temple on its original site and gathering the dispersed of Israel, then his identity as the Messiah is a certainty. But the Rambam, Rabbi Kaplan's quoting the Rambam, who is saying that you can assume somebody is the Messiah even before the temple is rebuilt and the ingathering takes place. And once those take place, then you can make it for sure that he's the Messiah. But before that, you can assume he is. It is very important to note that these accomplishments are a minimum for our acceptance of an individual as the Messiah. There have been numerous people who have claimed to be the Messiah, but the fact that they did not achieve these minimal goals proved them to be false, and that was one of the raps against the people who proclaimed that the Lubavitcher Rebbe was the Messiah. They said these things didn't happen, and but the Lubavitcher Rebbe was certainly a saintly individual, and he accomplished so much. Didn't have to be the Messiah to do all that. Of course, none of this precludes a miraculous advent of the Messiah or any other scenario. It is a foundation of our faith that the Messianic age can miraculously begin any day. When Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi asked Elijah, when would the Messiah come? He answered with a verse from Psalms, today, if you hearken to his voice. So again, it's premature for us to make any assumptions about whether or not we're ready for miracles. I have no idea how to answer that question. As both a genius and tzaddik, the Messiah will see through the sham and hypocrisy of this world. Thus, the prophet foretold in Isaiah, he will sense the fear of the Lord, and he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, nor decide after the hearing of his ears. He will be a critical thinker. As the Messiah's powers develop, so will his fame. The world will begin to recognize his profound wisdom and come to seek his advice. As a tzaddik, he will teach all mankind to live in peace and follow God's teachings. And then there's this huge quote from Isaiah, which we'll get into in another time. Although the Messiah will influence and teach all mankind, his main mission will be to bring the Jews back to God. So it's interesting that the Jews do not have to achieve God consciousness prior to everybody else achieving it. We can do it together. Thus the prophet Hosea said, for the children of Israel shall sit many days without king or prince. Afterwards shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king in the end of days. Similarly from Ezekiel, and my servant David shall be king over them, and they shall have one shepherd, and they shall also walk in my ordinances and observe my laws. I think that's a very key point for us to remember. that the Jewish redemption is happening concurrently to the redemption of all mankind. It's not like a linear one first, then this. He seems to say that a lot. As society reaches towards perfection and the world becomes increasingly godly, men will begin to explore the transcendental more and more. As the prophet said in Isaiah, "For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of God as the waters cover the sea." More and more people will achieve the mystical union of prophecy as foretold in Yoel. "And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy." Although man will still have free will in the Messianic age, he will have every inducement to do good and follow God's teachings. It will be as if the power of evil were totally annihilated. And as man approaches this lofty level, he will also become worthy of a divine providence not limited by the laws of nature. What is now manifestly miraculous will ultimately become part of the nature of things. Thus, wedded to man's newly gained powers to bring forth the best that untainted nature has to offer, will bring man to his ultimate destiny, which is the world to come. Living on the threshold of the Messianic age, as we do, should be a most exciting experience for any Jew. It should be for anybody. Other generations have expected the Messiah's imminent appearance on the basis of the forced interpretation of one or two prophecies, whereas we are living through the entire range of Messianic tradition, often coming to pass with uncanny literalness. If you keep your eyes open, you can almost see every headline bringing us a step closer to this goal. But as also predicted, it is a time of great challenge. We live in a time of snares and temptations, lying in wait for the unwary, drawing them away from the truth. As one great Rebbe said, it is very easy to be a Jew, but difficult to want to be a Jew. But imagine a time during which the Messiah has already come. The truth has been revealed. The entire world recognizes what Judaism really is, and the Torah is acknowledged as God's true teaching to the world. Those who have followed God's way are now the teachers and leaders of a generation desperately trying to make up for lives wasted on vanity and foolishness. There are two groups, those who have lived by the truth of Torah and those who have not, now desperately wishing to become part of it. To which group will you belong? So that is what he would like us to be mindful of when we daven the Amidah and say the last few verses of the first blessing. Okay. I know people have questions. We'll get to that at the end. Now we're going to give you a best practice for meditation. Okay. Boredom. It is difficult, and this is from Bante, our expert in meditation and mindfulness. It is difficult to imagine anything more inherently boring than sitting still for an hour with nothing to do but feel the air going in and out of your nose. You are going to run into boredom repeatedly in your meditation. Everybody does. Boredom is a mental state and should be treated as such. A few simple strategies will help you to cope. 1, reestablish true mindfulness. If the breath seems an exceedingly dull thing to observe over and over, you may rest assured of one thing: you have ceased to observe the process with true mindfulness. Mindfulness is never boring. Look again. Don't assume that you know what breath is. Don't take it for granted that you have already seen everything there is to see. If you do, you are conceptualizing the process. You are not observing its living reality. When you are clearly mindful of the breath or of anything else, it is never boring. Mindfulness looks at everything with the eyes of a child, with a sense of wonder. Mindfulness sees every moment as if it were the first and the only moment in the universe. So look again. I think this is true. And I think he's right in saying that when he says conceptualize, we have an attitude of like, been there, done that. Oh yeah, that's my breath. You are no longer mindful. You are not focusing on the breath, you're talking internally about the breath. If you focus back on the breath and you're becoming mindful of it again, then you're not conceptualizing about it. You are being with the breath. And it's like you're alive. And that's what he's referring to. His second tip is observe your mental state. Look at your state of boredom mindfully. What is boredom? Where is boredom? What does it feel like? What are its mental components? Does it have any physical feeling? What does it do to your thought process? Take a fresh look at boredom as if you have never experienced that state before. This is amazing advice, and we've seen this before. We see this repeatedly from Bhante. For example, when he talked about pain and discomfort, people's reaction is to try to distance themselves from it. But what he's saying is mentally say, oh, let me take a look at that. Let me focus on that. Make that my focal point. Let me just see what it is. Experience the boredom. So like he had said, experience the discomfort, experience the pain. What is that? And as he said before, what happens is the whole thing is initially all exaggerated in your mind, but once you become mindful of it, all the mind fluff, all the mental activity that you add to the experience diminishes, and it's just a little boredom. Okay, cool enough. So I like this, but he obviously has conquered a lot of his insecurities and anxieties and whatever else, so that he's like, oh, it's pain. Let's take a look at it. Now you know how guys from his culture can walk on fire and all this stuff. They're like, all right, so I got needle and I'm on a bed of nails. Like, okay, what of it? That takes a lot of mental toughness, but that's what he's talking about. Okay, so the next chapter, the next problem he talks about is fear. We're going to save that for next week. See how much time we have. Oh, good. We're going to have a little bit of an extended meditation now. So first things first. I'm going to stop recording.